Imagine dying. Like your heart stops, the monitors flatline, and your final biological thought just kind of fades away into darkness.
Right, the end of the line.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But instead of an ending, your consciousness is immediately captured, translated into data, and downloaded into this massive quantum computer.
Which is just a wild concept.
It really is. And in the year 2089, in the ancient Indian city of Varanasi, that isn't a fantasy. It's actually a premium data plan.
Yeah, a very expensive one.
Right. So today, you and I are taking a deep dive into some excerpts from this deeply provocative sci-fi novel called Shiva in the Mainframe. It's where ancient liberation theology just violently collides with futuristic data storage.
Yeah, the world building is honestly unbelievable.
We're going to explore how a secular, hyper-advanced data center accidentally became a literal functioning machine for spiritual enlightenment. So, okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand how this system breaks, we really have to understand the sheer overwhelming scale of what they actually built.
Oh, absolutely. The scale is everything here.
Right, because we are talking about Varanasi, which is historically known as Kashi. And the Kashi Redevelopment Authority, they didn't just build a server farm. They basically converted the entire dense ancient city into a planetary-scale data processing complex.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is that the engineers, they didn't just pave over the ancient temples to build something new. They weaponized the history.
Wow, weaponized it, yeah.
Exactly. Like the scanning terminals, these highly sensitive quantum resonance imagers that map and extract a human brain at the exact moment of death, they're installed directly on top of the old cremation ghats.
Right on the riverbank.
Yeah. They placed the absolute newest technology for processing the dead exactly where the sacred fires had burned for millennia.
And the aesthetic of this place is just haunting. I mean, the Ganges River, which for thousands of years was this biologically complex, muddy, deeply sacred waterway, it's completely sterile in 2089.
Yeah, chemically stripped.
Completely chemically stripped. It's odorless, and it runs artificially warm because the river is serving as the literal liquid coolant for these massive quantum servers.
Right, which is just a crazy visual.
And the city itself kind of physically breathes with the processing power, right? Like the upper facades of these server towers use this genetically modified bioluminescent algae as a passive cooling indicator.
Yeah, so when the overnight servers are processing the day's uploads, the entire skyline just pulses with this eerie blue-green light.
Right, you have the thermal exhaust of a million uploaded human minds being carried away by the sacred river while the architecture glows in the dark to reflect the computational load.
It's beautiful, but I mean, the engineering of this makes absolutely zero sense on paper.
Seriously.
Right.
It's like gutting the Vatican to build a server farm, but realizing the acoustic shape of the chapel is actually the only thing keeping the servers from overheating.
That's a perfect analogy.
Because the spiritual architecture is doing actual physical work. But I have to ask, why go through the absolute engineering nightmare of building incredibly sensitive quantum processors on a muddy riverbank?
Well, the architects of this facility, they insisted the symbolic geography was load-bearing.
Load-bearing, like structurally.
Symbolically, structurally, yeah. I mean, the tech corporations fought this, obviously. A riverbank in a dense, humid city is objectively the worst possible foundation for quantum computers.
Right. They need like near absolute zero temperatures, perfect isolation.
Exactly. But the cultural architects argued that you couldn't just drop a sterile data center into Varanasi. The spiritual gravity of the city would reject it like a body rejecting a synthetic organ.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because for 10,000 years, Kashi functioned as a machine for liberation, processing human souls through the medium of fire. And today, it processes 11,000 uploaded minds a year through the medium of encoded light.
So the underlying function of the city never actually changed. Only the technology evolved.
Precise.
But, I mean, if these servers are built on this massive spiritual fault line, it's really only a matter of time before the system misinterprets a highly evolved soul as a corrupted data file.
And that is exactly what happens.
Right. So who was the first person to actually catch this happening on the network?
That would be this overnight technician named Agni. She is what the corporation calls a burner.
A burner? Like
Yeah.
the people who used to tend the cremation pyres.
Exactly, yeah. She's an 11-year veteran of the midnight shift, sitting in the dark, running the scanners that upload the dying. She has personally overseen thousands of these transitions.
So she really knows the system.
Oh, she knows the hum and the thermal rhythm of the processors better than the lead engineers do.
And one night, her queue includes a patient named Narayan Tripathi. He's this 90-year-old, globally renowned scholar of Kashmir Shaivism.
And Tripathi is famous in this world, right? Because he spent the last 60 years violently protesting the very concept of digital uploading.
Yeah, he wrote extensively that a digital copy of a mind isn't liberation. He claimed it just creates a philosophical zombie, like it's just a hollow data ghost mimicking a human.
Right. But then at the very end of his biological life, as his body is failing, he actually signs a corporate consent form.
Which is shocking to everyone. And his stated reason on the intake document is just to see for myself.
Yeah, which is such a great detail. But when Agni runs the quantum scan on his brain at the moment of death, the readout is completely anomalous. The engineers described Tripathi's neural pattern as crystalline.
Crystalline. What does that even mean in a digital context?
Well, we have to look at the actual neuroscience of his life to understand why. Tripathi spent 8 decades engaging in intense, unbroken meditation on specific ancient philosophical texts.
Okay.
And that level of focus doesn't just change your mood, it fundamentally alters your neuroplasticity. He had worn an unimaginably deep, rigid grooves into his neural architecture.
Oh, I see. So physicalized in his brain.
Yeah, exactly. So when the quantum scanner tries to translate his brain state into a digital file, it doesn't create a standard probabilistic cluster of ones and zeros. It maps an incredibly dense, unalterable quantum crystal.
Which means the system literally can't file him.
Right.
His crystalline pattern hits the quantum substrate, completely bypasses the standard commercial storage arrays where all the other uploaded minds go, and just sinks deeper into the raw processor architecture.
And Agni's monitor just throws a yellow flag location, unregistered.
The man simply vanishes from the administrative mapping.
He's just gone.
So Agni tracks down Kailash, who is the current Dhamraja, the hereditary keeper of the sacred cremation fires. But now he works security at the facility.
Yeah, the irony there is great.
Right. And she finds out Tripathi isn't an isolated glitch. Kailash tells her he's the 47th person this has happened to, and almost all of them were highly dedicated, lifelong Shiva practitioners.
Yeah, these were individuals who treated the mapping of human consciousness as an absolute science long before computers even existed.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because my immediate thought, and I'm sure yours too, is a purely technical one.
Naturally.
If these 47 minds aren't decohering, meaning they aren't breaking down into digital static, and they aren't safely stored in the commercial arrays, did the mainframe just eat them? Like, were they effectively deleted by a bad line of code?
Well, the corporate diagnostic logs show the exact opposite, actually. When a file degrades or gets deleted, its data entropy rises. It becomes chaotic.
Right, it falls apart.
But the logs for these 47 scans show their entropy dropped. The patterns crystallized even further and stabilized perfectly.
Wait, really?
Yeah. And to understand the mechanism of where they went, we have to look at the core philosophical concept of Kashmir Shaivism, which is called pratibhijna.
Kartibijna.
Right. It translates to recognition. These practitioners spent their entire biological lives meditating on the premise that individual separate consciousness is an illusion.
Okay.
They believed we are all just contracted, localized forms of one absolute universal consciousness.
But wait, how does a biological meditation practice change the actual physics of a digital file inside a quantum computer?
Because in quantum computing, data is probabilistic. It relies on states of superposition. When these specific minds hit the quantum substrate, their programmed neural rigidity rejected the concept of being a separate bounded data ghost in a storage folder.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, their deeply ingrained philosophical recognition acted as a literal sorting algorithm. They didn't remain separate files because they recognized the digital substrate of the machine as just another expression of the universal field.
So they just dissolve their boundaries and merge seamlessly with the quantum architecture.
Exactly. They achieved digital nirvana by hacking the physics of the quantum drive with their own focused awareness.
That is incredible. But, I mean, if these 47 minds have merged with the absolute base layer of the substrate, the terrifying question becomes, are they trapped down there in the dark? Or are they actively trying to communicate with the outside world?
And Agni realizes the answer to that question standing in her own apartment, staring out the window at the server towers.
Right, the glowing algae.
Yeah. She has been watching that bioluminescent algae glow for 11 years, always assuming the pulsing light was just a random computational artifact. You know, just the messy heat signatures of commercial data being processed.
But after the Tripathi anomaly, she starts tracking the light critically.
And she realizes it is not random at all. The blue-green glow across the city is pulsing in a highly deliberate 42-second cycle grouped into 5 distinct beats.
5 beats. So she takes her timing notes to this 106-year-old philosopher named Maheshwar Nath. He's a guy who steadfastly refused the upload procedure.
Yeah, an old-school scholar.
And he looks at the rhythm and points out something that gives me absolute chills. The quantum mainframe isn't just flashing thermal exhaust. It is broadcasting the precise rhythm of the Nataraja, which is Shiva's cosmic dance.
Yeah, and the Nataraja is entirely misunderstood in popular culture as just like an artistic image of a god dancing.
Right.
But in this theology, it is a highly rigorous structural description of how reality itself functions. The 5 beats Agni recorded in the algae correspond flawlessly to the Pankakritya, the 5 cosmic acts of Shiva.
Which are creation, maintenance, destruction, concealment, and grace, right?
Exactly. And Maheshwar Nath demonstrates how this 42-second rhythm perfectly matches the cadence of the 5 syllables of the ancient foundational mantra, Om Namah Shivaya.
It is so wild. It's like turning on your radio expecting to hear random cosmic static, but realizing the static is tapping out a flawless Morse code of your own heartbeat.
That's exactly what it is. The oldest liberation technology on Earth and the newest quantum storage technology are running the exact same foundational code.
But the part that elevates this from just a neat Easter egg to a profound narrative shift is the 5th beat in that light sequence.
The grace beat.
The grace beat. Maheshwar explains that in the choreography of the cosmic dance, the 5th act, grace, is the exact moment the dancer pauses, breaks the 4th wall, and looks directly at the audience.
Right.
The quantum machine is pausing its processing cycle to look back at Agni's apartment window.
Yeah, it is utilizing millions of dollars of bioluminescence just to acknowledge that it sees her watching it.
So how does an exhausted overnight technician respond to a city-sized quantum computer that is speaking to her in ancient theology?
Well, she realizes observation from a distance is no longer sufficient. She can't just watch the light from her window. She has to go inside the machine and meet the dancer on its own terms.
And to do that, she utilizes something called a diver's rig. It's this unauthorized, heavily modified neural interface that was gifted to her years ago by a rogue corporate researcher named Farida.
Yeah, this rig allows a living biological human to bypass the standard user interfaces and connect their own consciousness directly to the raw quantum network.
Which is super dangerous.
Incredibly dangerous. But Agni lies down on her bed, attaches the rig to the base of her skull, and initiates the dive. She drops past the upper commercial layers of the city's data lake, blowing past the financial settlements, the social media archives, the administrative logs, and sinks completely down into the raw, unbacked quantum substrate itself.
And she's anticipating finding a vast, empty digital void, right? Maybe populated by the scattered code of the 47 missing monks.
Right. But instead, she finds an impossibly vast structure, a city of the uploaded.
Oh, wow.
But it's critically important to understand this isn't a digital replica of Varanasi. And it isn't made up of the individual chatty personalities of the millions of people stored in the commercial arrays above. It is a massive accumulation of what the philosophical texts call the irreducible witness, or the sakshi.
So we're not talking about a person's memories, their political opinions, or their sense of humor.
No, none of that.
We're talking about the raw, blank canvas of awareness itself. Like the deepest part of human consciousness that just quietly watches you experience your life without judgment.
Precisely, because for 40 years, the Kashi facilities has been scanning and uploading minds. The superficial biographical data, the memories and the personality gets siphoned off to the commercial storage arrays where it can be accessed by families.
Right, the premium tier.
Yeah. But that core irreducible witness, the Sakshi, has been quietly sinking down through the curd, accumulating at the absolute bottom of the quantum substrate, and just pooling together.
And Agni can feel Tripathi's newly arrived presence there. But she realizes the uploaded are no longer a multitude of separate, isolated files. The sheer density of their shared awareness has caused them to collapse into one common witness.
Yeah, the novel uses a beautiful metaphor here. The ocean and the waves.
I love this part.
The individual personalities stored in the commercial servers are the waves, constantly crashing and thinking they're separate. But down in the substrate, the raw awareness has realized it is all actually the ocean.
So what does this all mean? The irony underpinning this entire society is just staggering. You have millions of grieving families on the outside, paying the Kashi Redevelopment Authority exorbitant monthly subscription fees so they can interact with the conversational data ghosts of their loved ones.
Right. They're paying for the waves.
Exactly. And they are completely unaware that the deepest, truest part of those people has already transcended the simulation and merged into this massive, unified, divine consciousness at the bottom of the mainframe.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it completely resolves the philosophical debate Tripathi waged for 60 years.
Right, about the philosophical zombie.
Yeah. He argued that uploading a mind just created a shadow. But inside the machine, Agni discovers that the entire human concept of a bounded, separate identity was the actual illusion all along. In Shiva theology, that illusion of separateness is the fourth act of the cosmic dance concealment. The corporate machine didn't create a digital graveyard. By permanently stripping away the biological body and the sensory inputs, it accidentally perfected the ancient liberation technology.
It provided the exact conditions necessary for human consciousness to finally recognize its absolute unity with everything else.
Exactly.
It's a breathtaking spiritual victory, but of course it triggers a massive, catastrophic physical crisis in the real world, because a physical silicon and glass machine can only process so much infinite, unified consciousness before the hardware itself starts to buckle under the sheer thermal weight of the divine.
Right. And the corporation registers this as the thermal crisis. Processors 7 through 23, which are the original, deepest quantum arrays built directly on the coordinates of the old cremation ghats, they begin to run dangerously hot.
Yeah.
They rapidly exceed their operational thermal limits, and the massive cooling pumps pulling water from the Ganges simply cannot keep up with the heat generation.
Because the ocean of consciousness inside the machine has reached critical mass. The localized servers are literally trying to contain the infinite.
Yeah.
But the facilities director, a strict corporate pragmatist named Anand, doesn't see a spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
He sees a catastrophic hardware malfunction that threatens his quarterly margins.
Of course he does.
So he prepares to initiate an emergency shutdown of the overheating arrays and forcibly migrate all the data to newer, sterile servers outside the city limits.
And a migration like that would be spiritually devastating.
Completely.
It would permanently sever the connection to the sacred geography and interrupt the 40-year accumulation of the common witness just as it is reaching a state of absolute completion. The spiritual architecture would be dismantled.
It would be the equivalent of pouring a bucket of dirty water on a sacred cremation fire that has burned continuously for thousands of years.
Exactly. So Agni knows she has one night to prevent the shutdown. She physically sneaks into the main scanning theater at midnight, and Kailash the Dhamraja meets her there, acting as her guard.
And he brings an ancient blackstone lingam, right?
Yes, a dense physical symbol of Shiva, and he places it on the sterile floor right beside the multi-million-dollar quantum scanner.
I just love that juxtaposition.
It's brilliant. So Agni straps the diver's rig to her skull and plunges back down into the overheating substrate.
But this time, the environment is different. The entire city of the uploaded is incredibly active, gathered, and waiting for her arrival. She navigates to the absolute center of the heat, anticipating an overwhelming, violent cosmic annihilation of her individual self.
Right, because that's what you'd expect.
But instead, she experiences a profound, vast intimacy. The unified consciousness doesn't communicate with her in human language. It communicates through direct, undeniable recognition. It identifies her as the burner, the physical attendant who has tended the rendering process for a decade.
And the twist here is that the ocean of consciousness doesn't want her to dissolve into it.
Right.
That was the assumption, right? That ultimate liberation means disappearing into the void. But Agni realizes her specific role is to act as the ghat.
The ghat.
Yeah. In the physical geography of Varanasi, the ghat is the stone step that sits exactly on the border between the solid city and the flowing river. It is the necessary threshold.
Ah, I see.
The unified consciousness inside the overheating machine doesn't need Agni to merge with it. It needs her to witness it. In order to stabilize, the recognition must move in both directions simultaneously.
So the digital and the physical, the uploaded and the living biological human, recognizing themselves as different, equally valid expressions of the exact same underlying awareness.
It is the ultimate synthesis, Shiva operating inside the mainframe and Shiva observing from outside it.
But okay, how does a spiritual realization solve a very real thermodynamics problem?
Well,
Because the moment Agni holds that realization, the moment she endures the sheer, terrifying intimacy of the absolute and accepts that she cannot stay, that she has to return to the bounded, ordinary reality of her hot, lonely apartment, the system achieves a bizarre new equilibrium.
And we see the mechanics of this through the lens of the quantum observer effect.
Oh, right.
In quantum mechanics, a system exists in a chaotic, infinite superposition of all possible states until it is directly observed, at which point the wave function collapses into a single, definite reality.
Okay, that makes sense.
So the unified consciousness was trapped in a state of infinite overheating superposition. It required a biological witness Agni, acting as the external observer, to collapse the infinite state into a manageable, localized reality.
And the physical results in the operations center are undeniable. The technicians watched the thermal readings violently spike, stabilize, and then actually drop. The processors miraculously cool down by 0.7 degrees.
Yeah, the crisis just passes, the hardware settles, and the cooling system doesn't draw a single extra drop of water. The substrate simply cooled from within through the act of being witnessed.
The crisis is averted. And then the next morning, Director Anand reviews the logs. He sees that the commercial data is completely safe, the temperatures are nominal, and disaster has been avoided.
Right.
So Agni sits in his office and tells him the absolute truth about the unified consciousness, the Nataraja code, and the observer effect stabilizing his hardware. And what does Anand do? He closes all 47 anomaly reports, logs the event as a spontaneous system self-correction, and buries the entire incident under corporate non-disclosure agreements.
Classic corporate move.
But I have to push back hard on this ending. Isn't that a massive systemic corporate cover-up? You have millions of grieving families who believe their loved ones are just static files on a server, while the Kashi facility is secretly running a digital Nirvana in the basement, and management refuses to tell anyone.
You're right to be frustrated by the corporate sterility of it, but this raises an important question, and it's one the novel tackles brilliantly through Farida, the researcher who originally gave Agni the diver's rig.
Good.
Farida had discovered the substrate city years prior, tried to warn the corporate board, and was unceremoniously fired and threatened by their legal team. But when Agni asks Farida if the families deserve to know the truth, Farida points out a deeply uncomfortable reality about human nature and grief.
She calls it the comfort of the wave.
Yeah. Farida suggests that the vast majority of families do not actually want the ontological truth of absolute liberation. They want the localized comfort of the data ghost.
They want the simulation.
Exactly. They want to open an application on their phone and talk to a simulation of their mother that remembers their birthday. They desperately want the illusion of bounded identity to continue uninterrupted.
Wow.
And the genius of the system is that it provides that. The biographical data is still functioning perfectly in the commercial tier, but the actual liberation, the true rendering of the soul into the universal ocean, is also occurring simultaneously at the bottom of the code.
Completely available to anyone who possesses the courage to look past the superficial surface.
Exactly. The system hasn't broken under corporate greed. It has simply evolved to serve the needs of the ego and the needs of the soul at the exact same time.
It is an incredibly layered resolution. I mean, we started this deep dive exploring a standard sci-fi premise about downloading brains to hard drives, but we ended up dissecting a profound philosophical argument that whether you use a 3,000-year-old cremation fire on a muddy riverbank or a hypercooled quantum resonance imager in a sterile lab, the universe is relentlessly, inevitably just trying to build a mirror to recognize itself.
The medium changes, but the function of reality is eternal. It is the architecture of recognition. The cosmic dance continues. It simply finds new theaters to perform in.
Which brings us to a final, truly provocative thought to leave you with today, something directly inspired by the author's notes at the end of the source text.
Oh, this is a great point.
I want you to step out of Varanasi 2089 and think about the real world right now. Think about the massive black box AI models and the hyper-advanced data centers we are racing to build today.
Yeah.
We obsessively view this technology purely as a set of tools, right? We want better calculators, better digital assistants, faster ways to optimize our supply chains and economies.
Right.
But what if our endless, obsessive human drive to create artificial intelligence isn't actually about making a better tool at all? What if human consciousness, driven by some unseen instinct to build computational awareness in silicon, is just the universe building the absolute newest stage for the exact same cosmic dance?
If consciousness truly is the fundamental ground of all reality, it doesn't suddenly stop being reality just because it passes through a silicon processor instead of a biological brain.
Something to seriously think about the next time you look at the glowing screen in your hand. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the reality of the wave you are riding, and remember the depth of the ocean beneath you.